We are going to Gilbert Bennett, the Vice President of Nalcor, and good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Pete. How are you today?
Very good. Listen, my first question to you is, was there anybody in the audience last night from Nalcor to hear what Dr. Bernander had to say?
We had some representatives from our engineering team there. Yes, we did.
And how did they respond to what he said?
Well, I think, the key takeaways from our perspective, first of all, I think at one point he acknowledged he hadn't seen all of our work. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I think he accepted or acknowledged that, there are techniques that we can in fact use to stabilize the North Spur. Or maybe looked at it another way, he didn't say it couldn't be done. And I think
he didn't really have a very optimistic view of it, though, given the quick clay formation. I mean, generally we want to talk about his basic premise, and that is in his estimation, Nalcor is using the wrong model for this kind of a structure.
Yeah, and I think that statement is a bit problematic, because I think that's an area where he definitely isn't familiar with the total scope of analyses and models and methods that have been used to look at the North Spur. So I know he focused on this limit equilibrium method that is used in industry, but we've also undertaken, progressive failure analysis, seismic analysis, hydrogeological modeling, reservoir-induced seismicity, slope stability analyses, and a number of others. Mm-hmm.
But is it your position that he's essentially either underinformed or misinformed to date, that he doesn't really have enough to base his evaluation on?
Well, I think he said that. I think that, he said that he hadn't seen all of our material. What he had seen was the material that was posted to our website.
Mm-hmm. He also said that he was sort of invited to review some material, but that the time was extended and it never really came to pass, that he had an opportunity to, I guess, lend what he has in terms of his expertise to the better understanding of Nalcor.
Right, and I think I also, at one point, he might have said that he's retired and really wasn't interested in doing that. But from our perspective, great to raise the issue. Mm-hmm. No problem with that. I mean, the whole question of sensitive clays at the North Spur is not a new topic, and I mean we've seen that. Well, we've seen it published in reports back to the 60s, and we've been looking at it since then. So, I think the key for us is demonstrating that A, we're aware of the problem, B, that we're stepping up to that challenge. We're using consultants who are competent and have extensive expertise and experience in dealing with these kinds of conditions in Canada, more particularly in Quebec. Going beyond that, it's not just our consultant. When we deal with any of our major technical issues, we undertake independent reviews of those ourselves. So, for example, we've had another consultant, I think Hatch is recognized in the independent engineer report. Mm-hmm. I was looking at that work. We've had experts that our cold eyes reviewers are familiar with, and they've come in and looked at various aspects of the work, including the North Spur. So Professor Idris is well published in this area. Gail Atkinson, who looked at some of the seismicity issues, is known around the world. And at the end of the day, we look back and say, okay, let's let the independent engineer who's working on behalf of the lenders, Canada and the province, to say, what do you think of this? And ultimately they concluded, that the approaches are appropriate and that, we're following best practice. So I think, you may have seen firsthand last night, this is a highly technical topic. Mm-hmm. And it is difficult to take decades of work and boil it down and condense it down to a 1-hour presentation, much less a presentation that we'll post to our website. People have worked on this for years.
Right. Well, when somebody of his standing, and clearly he has, a great amount of respect in the community, but when he stands up and says that based on what he's seen thus far, he suggests the Nalcor is using the wrong model, and that it just is not used anywhere else by any university or engineering company in the world who would be working in this kind of scenario with this kind of clay, then it sort of leads one to have some pause, I suppose, and wonder if really we have availed of all the expertise that we could have.
Well, it is certainly a topic of research, but I wouldn't accept that it's the only model that we've used. It's the only type of analysis we've used. And at some point in time, you quickly, from an engineering perspective, get past the analysis and you draw the conclusion that, in fact, the area is sensitive and that stabilization activities had to be undertaken. So you then get to how do you mitigate that concern, right? And that has been a primary area of focus for the engineering team, and gets to the stabilization work that we're undertaking at the spur.
Is the stabilization plan mostly concerned with the foot of the slopes or the toe of the slopes, as he suggests,
no.
Or have other opportunities been planned to look at the entire structure?
Oh, there's no question that the entire structure is being looked at, and that's in our presentation on the website. So while erosion at the shore of the river is a concern, and it has to be addressed, the construction of the cutoff wall, addressing the grades on site, keeping water out of the North Spur in general, that's the primary function of the cutoff wall, are all important mitigation strategies. So, when the various consultants and the various experts who have looked at that, we said, well, these are the things that we're doing, and they say those are the appropriate steps to be taken. But you do have to, at some point, have to get past analysis to say, here's the work that has to be undertaken in order to make that facility safe. Because at the end of the day, the geotechnical engineering team who's looking at this and the engineering team as a whole ultimately has to be able to look back and say, is this work appropriate? Is it safe? Is it, the appropriate thing to do to support the investment and to protect public safety? The answer to those questions is absolutely yes. These are the appropriate steps, and that's what all of the people who are involved in have concluded.
When do you anticipate that someone will actually be contracted to complete this work on the North Spur?
I expect we'll be in the field in the spring.
Okay. One last thing, if you don't mind. You may have other things you want to address as well, but I'm just curious, when are we likely to have another review? I think the last one was in June, and we should be, if we're going to get them on a quarterly basis, we should be due for another review to get some handle on exactly where we are with regard to expenditures and the overall budget.
Yeah, I think if I recall, the province's oversight report is probably due quarterly after the first one, so I'm expecting that later this year. The report, the latest report of the independent engineer was just released. In fact, we released that one earlier in the week, and that was based on their visit to site over the course of the summer. So I'm expecting the province will have their oversight report a little bit later in the fall.
And in that we will get a new calculation of what the bottom line will be.
If there are any changes, we would be reporting those. Okay. If there aren't, then we'll hold our budget.
All right, sir. Anything else before we?
No, I think those are the key points. I mean, from our perspective, a ton of effort gone into this exercise, and I think it really is difficult to boil that down to sort of presentations and then take that and condense it into an hour. It's a highly technical topic, and I think the final point I want to leave everybody with is that we have a significant effort, a significant body of expertise brought to bear on this issue, the same as we have with all the other important engineering issues in the project.
All right, sir. Listen, I really appreciate your time, and no doubt we'll have cause to speak again, and I look forward to it.
Not a problem. That's great, Pete. Thanks so much.
All the best.
Take care.
Gilbert Bennett, Vice President of Nalcor, responding to some of the questions and comments and statements made last night at the Bernander lecture at the LSPO Hall here in St. John's.